Ladies and gentlemen and robotics programmers, here's a few things before we code. All right, so why do we place the motor controller in the middle of the breadboard? Now that is a great question. Let's take a look at this. Let's see if I can find a picture of it. Down. Yeah. Okay, so why do we put the motor controller here? Well, because see this thing right here? These are all connected. These are all connected. These are not connected to these. So when we put it right in the middle, then basically this thing, so basically that is connected to this pin or that pin if you put it there, but this is not connected. Then anyway, so we can connect this thing here and it's connected here, but not over there. This is connected here, not over there. It just allows us to work with each side of the board. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, the next question is. Go over the new components. All right, well, let's go over the new components here. So I had you look this up. I just want to make sure you understand. All right, why can't you drive a motor directly from a pin on the red board? Okay, well, if you look at the red board, it's 3 volts or 5 volts, and these things may not have enough power to run the motor. So what you do is you run the motor from the VIN. So basically whatever power goes in, it doesn't reduce it down to 3 volts or 5 volts. So basically if you had a really powerful motor, you could run a lot of power to it without blowing up the rest of the stuff that requires 3 volts or 5 volts. If that makes sense. Okay. Hopefully that made sense. What is a switch and how is it done? You figure that out on your own. What is a motor driver? It basically is what we just talked about. It allows you, so you have a very low-powered Arduino board, and it allows a low-powered Arduino board to run powerful motors. What is a VIN pin? Well, let's take a look at the VIN pin, and well, it's up here. So that's what we just talked about. We have this VIN pin, and whatever power you put in, it sends that right out. So like I said, you can send lots of power to the motors, or so basically if you put in like 13 volts into the Arduino, it's going to reduce it down to 3 or 5 for normal use. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. That's not it. All right. Why do we use the VIN pin for, and why? I just talked about that. Why would you not connect the VIN to the VCC? Okay, well, let's jump back over here. So the VCC powers this microcontroller here, right? And so you don't want to overpower and blow this up. So this thing requires 5 volts, right? And if you had the whole Arduino hooked up to like 13 volts or something, it would burn it up. Okay, so this is the power motors, or the V voltage for the motors is for the motors. The VCC is to power this board itself. Okay, hopefully you can figure those out on your own. All right. All right. Okay, so the first thing you should do is go to Google Classroom, download and open the first sketch, and then we're going to code the instance variable declaration area. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so we're going to come over here. So the first thing I want you to notice is all the control pins are constants. All the control pins are constants. So let's grab the first one. Or let's type in the first one. So we're going to go here, select that, press Control V. So there's a constant int AIN1 equals 13 with a semicolon. And so control pin 1 on the motor driver for the right motor. So we're basically sending information from the Arduino to the motor driver, and it basically says, hey, do we go forward? If we're sending power, that means we want to go forward. If we're not sending power, that means we don't want to go forward. Okay, and so then this one is going to be constant in, so this one is going to be 12. So pin 12 is going to go into AIN2. So let's change that to a 2. that's pin 2. We're sending information to pin 2, and it's telling it whether or not to go backwards. The next one is going to be PWMA, all cap. That's going to be pin number 11 with a semicolon, and that one tells it how fast to go. And then the next thing we're going to keep track of is our switch pin. Okay, and again, so again, the switch pin basically controls the switch. Let's take a look over here. So basically on these things, we're talking to so PWMA, so we're talking to this, AI2 and AI1. So we're basically sending power to these things from the Arduino, telling it, hey, how fast we want to go. Do we want to go forward or do we want to go backwards? So that's basically what we're setting up. All right. The next thing is, so down here we have variables. So these things are constant. They don't change. So 13 is always going to control this first pin. 12 is always going to control that pin. 11 is always going to control that, right? So these are constants. They don't change. These variables down here, they will change. The motor speed is going to change depending on what you put in, okay? All right. Let's go down to the void setup now. Let's see. Let's go down to the void setup. I don't think there's anything special that I need to tell you. Yeah. So let's jump back to the void setup. Okay. And what are we going to do here for void setup? Okay, so we're basically going to set up our switch pin, which is number 7, and then we're going to set up all these pins as output because they're going out from the Arduino to our motor controller. Okay, so let's copy this right here. And we'll just paste this up here, get rid of those slashes. And this is going to be pin mode AIN1 is output. So output from the Arduino, and it goes to our motor controller. Okay. And so this basically, you can look through each of these things to figure out what's happening here. We notice here that we're setting up our serial controller. We're sending out the input. We're starting it. We're beginning the communication from the PC to the Arduino board and the serial controller. And then we're going to type this out for user instructions. All right, let's see what's next. So now we're going to go to the loop. No instructions there. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the loop. Okay, so we're going to start our if. Okay, so in order to run this thing, we have to give some instruction. So we have our void loop, and the first thing is going to be right here. So if serial.available is greater than 0. So basically the user's typed anything. So we have our if. We're not going to really do much of anything unless the user types something in. Okay, so if the user types something in, and then the next thing we're going to do is, so motor speed. So we have our variable motor speed that we set up here, int motor speed. So it's going to hold an integer. Okay, and so our motor speed equals serial.parse int. All right, so let's see if we can so basically, let's say that I typed in okay, so let's say that I typed in on the serial 255. Okay, so it's basically gonna grab that 255. It's going to take it, turn it into an integer, and then store it in our motor speed. All right, because motor speed, the only thing that it can hold is a integer. Okay, so for example, if you typed in the letter L, well, it's going to crash, right? Because that's not an integer. So basically, it takes it, turns it into an integer, and sticks it in there. So that parse int stops us from having some crashes and that sort of thing. Okay, so go ahead and type that in, and then it repeats back to us, hey, the motor speed is motor speed that we just typed in, and then we have another if. So we have if, and it's done. So that's all done. Now we have a new if. If our digital pin 7 is off, so basically the little switch on there is off, or it's on, then we're going to spin the motor speed. Otherwise, we're going to spin at 0. So if the switch is on, run the motor. Otherwise, don't run the motor. Now, so this motor speed, we have to teach it how to motor speed. So this is a user-defined method, right? So down here we have void spin motor int motor speed. So let's take a look at that. So we're asking it to motor speed. Now we've got to finish teaching it how to motor speed. First of all, this is void. Let's see if we have anything over here in the spiel. Let's take a look. No, nothing there, man. I don't have. I'm kind of lacking there. Okay, so this is void, which means is it a command or a question? It's a question. That's a command. Okay, and then it requires. It has a parameter. You have to send it the motor speed. So whenever we say spin motor, we have to send it an integer, right? Which is what we're doing. All right, and so that's get us started. So then here we have beginning and the end of our user-defined method. So we have our if, else, if, else. So we have 3 possibilities. One of them is going to run only 1, not 2, not none, and only 1, right? So if the motor speed is greater than 0, what we're going to do is this. Okay, so we're going to digital, which should be a digital layer. So we're going to, so pin 1 is high, so that means we're going to go forward, and pin 2 is off, so that means we're not going to go backward. So if it's greater than 0, we're going to go forward, not backward. All right, so copy these things again, so just copy this here, paste it, copy this, and paste it. We're going to modify it though. Okay, so if the motor speed is less than 0, we're going to flip-flop this. This one's going to be low, so we're going to not be going forward, and this is going to be high, all caps. We are going to be going backwards. Else, then they're also both going to be low and low. We're not going forward, and we're not going to go backward. And then the PWMA, which controls the speed, is going to be the motor speed. So like, okay, so hey, we're going forward, and then here's how fast we're going. Notice that we're doing absolute value right here, okay, of motor speed, because motor speed could be positive or negative. You could type in a positive number or a negative number. But we don't need a negative number here. So if it's negative 255, it converts it to positive 255. If it's a positive 255, it leaves at 255. So we're using the absolute value method. We need positive and negative here. We need positive, negative here. Don't need positive, negative there. That's why we're using the absolute value. All right, let's go ahead and see how many mistakes we made. So let's verify this code. And oh, I think that was something that I needed to get it to work one time, so I added that. So we can just comment that out. I don't think, hopefully we won't need it. Let's see, I was messing around with it, trying to get it to work before. Let's see what happens. Okay, so no errors. Let's upload it and see what happens. Oh, let's see, tools. I was on the wrong port. Let's go ahead and upload. Okay, so let's see if it works. Enter the motor speed. So I'm going to say 255, and it works. Okay.